last special meeting of the Nacogdoches Independent School District Board of Trustees, let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, and then notice this meeting has been legally posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meeting Act. Board member T.D. Howarth is not here at this time. Please join us in turning off your cell phones or switching them to silent mode. We are going to go into, Ms. Krzyzewski wants us to go into executive session real quick for just a minute to give us some background before we come out and do what we got to do. So I'm going to say the board will now conduct an executive session to discuss the items posted on the agenda pursuant to the following provisions of the Texas Open Meeting Act as allowed by the Texas Government Code Section 551.071 and 551.074. No voting will take place in closed meeting. Any action the board wishes to take as a result of discussion in closed session will take place after the board reconvenes in open session, and it's now 9:01. We started without me.
Okay.
The board is now reconvening in open session at 9:26. We've been legalized now. Okay. We have, let's see, the consideration of method of selecting a superintendent is the first thing on the agenda. Any discussion? Or a motion? And we can open it up for discussion. Somebody got a motion that pertains to that.
That would be me. I make a motion as to agenda item 3A that I move that the board conduct a search for the superintendent of schools and that all applications be submitted on the board's behalf, excuse me, to board counsel Karszewski Bradshaw.
I second the motion.
Okay, now, discussion. Anybody have any, read the motion again?
It is, I move the board to conduct a search for the superintendent of schools and that all applications be submitted on the board's behalf to board counsel Karszewski Bradshaw.
Anybody have anything they need to discuss with that?
Seems straightforward to me.
Okay, and I'll make them, bring it to a vote. All those in favor of Kelly Karszewski being the point person for taking that, is that what it is?
It's Karszewski Bradshaw's firm.
Karszewski Bradshaw firm, take me in the point for taking all applications, raise the right hand. Okay. The next motion is consideration of qualifications of superintendent and approved job posting.
Mr. President, as to agenda item 3B, I move the board approve the vacancy announcement of superintendent of schools as discussed, and that the vacancy be posted on the school district's website as well as the TASA and TexasISD.com web pages immediately.
I'll second.
They have first and a second. Susan seconded. All right, discussion.
I'm going to throw the, just the calendar up there for you. So this is a copy of.
I think we're doing the qualifications.
I think we're on the qualifications on B.
I think we need to move.
Okay.
There you go. So just as a reminder, this is a draft that I put together with Mr. Green's assistance for you that basically takes a glimpse of several different job postings that are currently posted for vacancies of superintendents across the state, and just kind of summarized and gave you an idea of what those postings look like. It's a workshop, kind of a worksheet only for you to look at and provide feedback on what you like, what you don't like, and we can revise today and to allow action on a final document that can be posted. You can see the first paragraph, most job postings always give a little snapshot of what your district looks like. So there you have some data that provides just a little bit of background on Nacogdoches and your student population, your budget, etc. And then rather than do an extensive list of qualifications, just simply require the individual to be certified as a superintendent. And then what we chose to do was just give you the option of highlighting maybe 2 or 3 really important characteristics or qualifications that you primarily will be looking for as you vet through these applications, whether it's a particular amount of job experience, whether it's experience in a particular area. You know, that's just for you to decide. Those were just some suggestions that we threw up there, but you're free to change those. And then the bottom section simply gives them instructions on what the application process needs to look like. In other words, what documents do you want to see? So I bulleted everything that most job applications have, and you may look at that and say, you know, we don't need this, we don't need a letter of interest necessarily, we just need a resume, or we don't need copies of transcripts, we just need, you know, the actual resume document. I left, you know, references. A lot of times they ask for copies of references. You may want to identify that you want a certain number of professional references. You may want to be very specific that you're asking for professional references as opposed to personal references. So it's completely your choosing. The last paragraph is simply a reminder to the applicants that you are committed to confidentiality, that the applications will be submitted outside the district to our office for purposes of maintaining confidentiality, and that you will not reveal the identity of any applicant until such time as the board names a lone finalist, and hopefully that will provide them just a little bit of reassurance that despite the fact that the board is conducting the search, the board knows the law and knows how important it is for the candidates to feel comfortable in applying, and that information will be kept confidential. And then, of course, the boxed information is just information on where they can submit their applications. They can either submit it through the mail, or we have an email address, superintendent search at our email, and they can send it directly there as well. So I'll just step back and let you guys have at it, and you can mark that up as you desire.
I have just a few comments that I made in looking at the description there. I believe we'd probably be more accurate to say approximately 6,500 students. I believe at the last TEA snapshot day, it was around 6,423 or so, somewhere in that neighborhood. So personally, I'd love to see that say 6,500.
Okay.
We say that we have 1 pre-K campus. I believe that's incorrect. I need to verify this, but I believe we've got pre-K on 4 campuses. But we need to check that out for sure.
We pulled it up just from the district's website as to
Sure.
how you are defining your schools. You know, when you drop down on your schools, and it
Sure.
tells you what you have. So I guess that was in reference to the
Well, I think we just said, let's
Carpenter.
true that up.
Yeah, true enough.
So
Yeah.
we will
And then-
definitely make sure that it's factually accurate.
Because I noticed we also say 1 technical high school, and I'm not sure that's factual either. So
Yeah,
it
that's
really
this
needs
came exactly, you know, from the website on the pull down. So this is what they would see if they, you know, which is the first place they're going to go is your website to
True.
research.
Sure.
And so,
And so it means we probably need to fix that too.
so let me. Would Ms. Bryant be the most appropriate person? Does she communicate all district
If-
stats?
Oh, you're waving.
Stats and stuff, or?
You got it?
I would be the person that changes
Amber?
that, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Amber,
Yes.
you and I have an appointment.
Yes.
Well, if we're trying to make a decision and get this rolling today so we can keep on track, I mean, my suggestion is we just amend this and take out the numbers and say NISD has campuses, including for pre-K, elementary, middle school. If you want to say 1 high school, we all agree on that. But I mean, we could clean this up a little bit, because I think our goal, and the reason last week we pushed this to today, is because we're wanting to get on the ball and get the timeline going and get people time to get applications in. So,
That's pretty
but
cut
it,
right.
will that be able to be found out this morning and corrected before we we
On
can,
the website or on her?
no, just the accuracy. I know, like in the past, like Pam said, in the past administration, there was some changing around with pre-Ks and this and that and the other. So are we gonna get the accurate information this morning while we're here, so we can make the decision and change the document?
I can work on that. I can go down to curriculum and try and get, which campus has what grade levels.
Well, if we can just agree that it'll be updated,
Yeah.
we don't have to vote on,
I thought we're voting on the actual document that's gonna be posted today, this morning. That was my understanding. Is that not right, Ms. Krzyzewski?
That is correct, but I think that you can do a combination of the both. I mean, I think
Okay.
that what you're saying is you're going to vote on a document that has factually correct information as of today, and we will ensure that before it's posted, that
And
it
that's-
will-
and that's
it will
good.
contain that.
yeah.
That's
So
okay.
I made note of
They'll get
that.
that
Okay.
fixed.
These
So-
So you
statistics
call it
that-
true it up,
True it up.
Yeah.
So we don't have to have the actual amended document on our vote today.
Correct.
just the
I'm
facts.
yes.
I'm good with that.
I think the
The
good
actual
part, the part that's
statistics-
gonna be important is the
The idea.
next paragraph down.
Well, we wanna be accurate, so,
Yeah,
sure.
agreed.
okay.
Just so you know, the statistics, the percentages, that's straight from TEA's website. So
Right.
that's exactly what an applicant would find when they research. So it's the most current data TEA has. It may be different than what you all have for purposes of your enrollment for this year, but as far as what TEA posts for, the previous year, this is what your numbers are.
Okay.
On the 3 bulleted points that follow that, I would suggest on the second bulleted point that a proven record with economically disadvantaged, limited English proficiency, and, at risk. Those are the populations that we're struggling with.
Well, my question would be is who defines what that proven record is and decides if a particular candidate has that? Or do you just take their word for it, or do
Well,
you look
let
for
them
details?
demonstrate that to us. I've worked at, whatever that is, whatever.
I mean, I agree it's important, that's what we're looking at. I think that's proper to vet people over it and interview them and ask them questions, but,
I think we need to see what they say their proven record is.
I agree, we asked them about it, but,
or could we say experience? Instead of proven record, experience in minority relationships, working with the economically disadvantaged and the other.
At risk and limited English proficiency. Demonstrated ability,
All right? How you like that? Demonstrated ability. You know what that was?
yeah, you've got demonstrated ability in there. I think we start that sentence that says, the applicant's rendition and opinions as to their record in minority relations and demonstrated ability work, and add that, because
I don't know about their opinion. It sounds pretty.
well, I'm
I don't wanna
concerned about
wordsmith it.
somebody having an argument. I'm concerned about somebody taking a candidate that's put in a resume, and if the resume doesn't have something on it about some proven record because they don't put it on there in this,
I'm
they might say, well, you're
I
not
agree, proven
following your
record is-
requirements.
But a demonstrated ability to work with minority populations, economically disadvantaged,
Okay,
limited English proficiency,
Okay.
and at-risk populations.
because
That-
they're
Make your
demonstrating.
case,
Yeah,
sell me on it.
that's my point. They're
Yeah.
demonstrating that ability in their past
Right,
history.
right.
I'm good with that.
Okay,
You
so
get-
the proven record would be taken out,
Right,
and it'd be demonstrated ability.
demonstrated ability to work with minority, limited English
I'm good with
proficiency, at risk, and
Economically
disadvantaged.
disadvantaged. I got it.
The four.
Okay,
That's
I'm a good
good.
secretary, I got it.
All right,
All right,
I like the third one.
What level of degree are we going to require? I don't see any notation here in regard to, we're looking at master's level. Is that something that should be included, PhD level? And, we're casting a wide net, but what education level are we targeting?
Is having a superintendent certificate, does that embedded in that, is that a certain level of?
I believe you have to have a master's
Master's?
degree in order to get your superintendent certificate.
Is that correct?
I think that ought to be the requirement to have a superintendent certificate
And all that that,
and all that that entails.
A minimum of a superintendent
Certificate.
certificate as required by the state.
Yeah, is that what, yeah.
And I actually am of the opinion we wouldn't necessarily have to limit this to someone who's been a previous superintendent, but I think they should have previous administrative
yeah.
experience. But maybe they've been an assistant, maybe they've done other things in administration, and that's where their track record is, and they've never actually been a superintendent. That would,
Well, and in the application process, they're supposed to give us a copy of their valid Texas superintendent certificate. So
Right.
that's where we're getting.
well, and so the ideal candidate, the sentence says the ideal candidate will have successful experience as a superintendent. I don't see that as having to be necessary. I would say successful experience in administration, and then you still have the certificate being
Of
required.
superintendent.
You see what I'm saying? Somebody might have their certificate, but maybe they've never served as a superintendent,
Okay.
and they might be an ideal candidate.
And we're trying to look at a wider,
How about
Area.
successful leadership experience?
Well, I kind of think it's important they have have been in the previous administration.
Well, that's what I meant by leadership, but if you want to say leadership or administrative experience.
That's what
I think just to put an ideal candidate will have successful experience in administration.
I like that.
And then possess the following vital characteristics and qualifications.
That'd be fine. Anybody have any problems with that?
You okay?
What about, down here,
Professional,
applicants must submit the following items. Is there anything on that list that we need?
well, the number of professional letters of reference. What is the tradition?
Normally 3,
3?
but that's most
I
require
don't know what it is.
3.
Kelly, what's the normal, 2 or 3?
Yeah, we saw a broad range, but no more than 5 certainly.
Of course, you realize they're not gonna ask somebody to do it that's gonna give them a bad one, so you have to take that.
So 3 is,
3, maybe? 2, 3?
3.
Okay.
all right.
All right, then the place where the date is, I guess we won't debate that one until we get to the timeline, correct? You can fill that in
Yes,
based on
I'll
what
fill
we
it
do
in
with the
based on
timeline.
the action on the next agenda item.
Okay.
Are all of the other,
Everything else okay?
okay.
All right, we have a
Let
motion.
me revisit though, make sure I have all the edits.
Okay.
We're going to what was it that you said? We're gonna
True up.
We're gonna true up the first
The
paragraph,
facts.
we're gonna get the correct statistics. And then the next paragraph or the next sentence will read, the ideal candidate will have successful experience in administration and possess the following vital characteristics and qualifications. The first bullet stays as is. The second bullet will now read, a demonstrated ability to work with minority relations, economically disadvantaged families, limited English proficiency, and at-risk students. Third bullet,
I'll put families at the end, or
I'll put that.
students and families.
Okay. Okay. The third bullet will stay as is. Application process will stay as is with the exception of, we will add the number 3 before professional letters of reference. And I will fill in the March date based upon the calendar that's approved on the next agenda item. So is that what everybody understood the edits to be?
Sounds good.
Okay, so this is the document that your motion is based upon.
We have a motion and a second. Now, all those in favor of passing that as the letter we send out, raise your right hand. Okay. Now, Kelly, the next one is consideration of timeline and approval of search planning calendar.
board meeting dates, and I've highlighted for you spring break, because I know some of you won't be available spring break.
That's the 13th through the 17th?
Yes, of March.
What are the stars?
Our current board meeting dates, based on the revisions or the amended schedule from last board meeting, we moved the February, no, I'm sorry, is it February, March that we moved? Yes, February, March, we moved down a week. So we already have those dates set, but that doesn't mean that you have to take action on those board meeting dates. In other words, some of the things that you will be required to do in conducting this search, your vetting of your applications, your interviews, etc., you all need to call special board meetings for.
Can you explain the process and procedure the board undergoes on the vetting of candidates and whether it is it like this here?
The
or
board
is
could
it
create,
executive or both, or what is it?
the board could create a subcommittee to vet, or the board could say, no, the entire board wants to review every application. That is probably the more typical, and so you would call a special board meeting. Mr. Green would bring all the applications to the board, 7 copies of every application, and you would basically just go through them as any employer would and determine, do we want to interview all these applicants, or do we want to vet them by virtue of comparison of who meets the qualifications versus who does not, or who maybe you'll rank them, maybe it's, the process is completely yours, but the vetting basically is to determine, based on that initial pool of applications, who do we want to interview? Who
And
meets the first cut?
Is that done in an executive session?
Yes, that's done in closed session.
Can you put the calendar back up?
The school calendar?
Right. I'm kind of concerned the March 20th vetting proposed date is a little bit close to the interviews, on giving folks notice for the interviews. It's only 2 to 4 days apart. So, I mean, if we actually make a decision on who to interview on the 20th, and then you're calling folks and saying you got to get over here the next 2 to 4 days, maybe that's totally realistic. It wouldn't be in my world. Anybody else have any thoughts on that? I almost think we should back up the vetting of the candidates maybe prior to spring break, like that second week in March.
Anytime after the 9th.
And it wouldn't offend me to back up the deadline for applications maybe to the 1st of March either, but I am concerned about the vetting and the interviews being so close together with people's busy schedules
I
at work.
agree. I mean, if we post it February 1st, having 4 weeks, 3 weeks, I mean,
March 3rd is a Friday, or March 1st is a Wednesday.
Well, what about,
for applications, and then vet them the next week, if we could agree on a date to get together the week of the
is
6th.
3 weeks too short?
I think 3 weeks is too short.
So you think 4 weeks, so having them due March 3rd?
Kind of what I was thinking, Friday, March 3rd, and then we could vet them the next week with people's calendars.
Sure.
And that gives us time to do the interviews, a little more scheduling of the interviews.
The 6th through the 10th
Yeah,
be the vetting dates, somewhere in there.
yeah. We want to pick a day?
You think that's ample time?
I think you will know once the applications start coming in, and remember, you can always change your calendar. It is not uncommon at all for you to adopt a calendar initially and then have it revised as you move
Especially
along the
to
process
schedule the
because
interviews.
of your own schedules as well as the schedules of the applicants or because you just simply haven't received the number of applications that you anticipated. And maybe you want to, again, cast a wider net, and we want to post elsewhere, or we want to change our posting to open it up to more candidates. So all of this is subject to change. I wouldn't
So
go
we-
any shorter than a month
Okay.
for applications, but,
So in March, at the close, if the close date was March 3rd and we got together then on the 8th and said, well, we're not satisfied with these applicants, we could reopen the application,
absolutely,
extend the deadline. Is is what you're saying.
Well, I'm comfortable with the 3rd as a deadline for applications.
I am too.
And if we could vet the candidates the week of March 6th.
Yeah, we don't have to set a specific date, we could give a window,
Yes.
6
Okay.
through 10.
6 through 10.
And that way you could even schedule 2 or 3 meetings if you needed to.
If we
As long
need
as we
to,
meet the
right.
open meetings act posting deadlines, you can meet as often.
Okay,
But all of those meetings will be closed session.
Correct.
But
Yes.
yet,
Once we
it
get
still has to
into
be
the
posted.
meeting,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely.
Let me ask, this is a very aggressive schedule, I
Yeah.
believe, option 1 that we're reviewing. And this would put us making a decision before May.
Yes.
In your experience, will it hurt's probably the wrong word, could it impede the number of applications that we would be receiving because we're trying to move through this process before May, as opposed to moving it out a little further into May, June?
My experience is just the opposite. I
Okay.
think that if you pushed it closer to May or June or July as far as the ending date for the actual hire, remember you named a lone finalist, then you can't hire someone for another 21 days. So you basically have to have your entire search process completed almost a month before you actually hire. And so a superintendent is handicapped to come in that late in the ballgame to be able to effectuate his or her vision or the changes or
Budget.
Yeah, budget begins, for instance, last night I checked your website and looked at your minutes, and you began your first budget workshop last year in April, and had some extensive action on your budget the 1st of June, and so you really ideally want to start a superintendent search, I think most experts will say before Christmas, which would give you 2 months of a posting, and then the ability to make the decision on who to hire early enough in spring so that superintendent knows he or she is leaving their former district, or knows that where they're going to be, and have the ability to be an integral part of the planning stages for the upcoming school year.
That kind of beckons the next question then. I mean, typically, I would assume, and it must be a false assumption, that when you hired that late in the school year, that new superintendent wouldn't be joining your staff until after they wrapped up their school year at their current school.
That
And so their start date would likely be maybe June the 1st. Is that true or
correct.
false? Okay.
It can happen both ways, in the sense that if the incoming superintendent is in a district that the board has the ability to appoint a qualified interim and release that superintendent earlier, then that certainly can happen, but you just don't know until you get through the process as to whether or not your incoming superintendent has that luxury.
Typically, what do you see on average out there across the state? What would you see? People finishing out the
Late-
school year,
Yes,
or?
usually it's late spring that the hires are made, and then the incoming superintendent attempts to negotiate with their existing board so that they can begin the process of working with the outgoing superintendent. I think that's usually ideal, is the outgoing superintendent, that person may be retiring or whatnot, that there's a little bit of an overlap so that they're able to mentor and so forth and so on. That's kind of the ideal. It doesn't always happen that way, but that's certainly they're anxious to get in on the budget process, and so as soon as they can do that.
Well, and that's what I was about to kind of lead into then. Is it realistic to assume if we hired someone on April the 27th that they would be able to participate in the budgeting process, assuming that they have some restrictions from their current job?
It is fairly realistic that an existing employer would allow some time off for that outgoing superintendent, because they need to immediately start focusing on bringing in a new superintendent. So we've seen anything from every Friday, the incoming superintendent will spend in the new district, and so, yes, there's
Okay.
definitely some overlap and some negotiation.
Okay, thank you.
change the vetting of candidates to the week of March 6th to the 10th, is that correct? Okay. And then,
And
what about the next,
the application deadline was going to be the 3rd.
okay. And then what about the interviews? That week of the 22nd to the 24th? Go back to the calendar then. That's right after spring break. We could change it to the week of, we could do the whole week. That's completely up to you.
I'd probably leave that for flexibility, the 20th through the 24th.
Okay? I built in a callback. You know, I'm positive you guys are gonna get all kinds of applications, and so you may choose to interview quite a few the initial round, and then wanna narrow it down maybe to your top 3 or 4 for callbacks. So that's where that comes from for the following week.
Okay.
You okay with that one?
So, naming a lone finalist would be a special board meeting on the 6th?
We basically just looked at, I know that Thursdays are good dates for you for board meetings, and so your regular board meeting is April 20th. We could, I don't think ideally we can have it by the 20th, but if we pushed it to the 27th and had a special board meeting on the 27th to hire, then that means we could identify the lone finalist as early as the 6th.
And would that take a board meeting?
Yes, that would take a special board meeting. So again, just keeping with your Thursdays, but if a different date works for you better that week, those 2 weeks just,
But if you take the 27th, is that 21 working days or 21
days.
calendar days?
calendar days. We just back it up 3 weeks.
The 7th would be the 21st day, so it'd have to be,
No, we have to name the lone finalist.
that's what I'm saying, is if you come back on the 27th, 21 days,
It's April 6th.
that's April 6th or 7th, so
Yeah.
it could be earlier than that, but it can't be any later than that.
Right. So those dates look okay then?
Well, I'm wondering if we're doing callbacks the week of March 27th, is it possible to name a lone finalist at the conclusion of that week, maybe that Thursday? And move it up a bit?
Well, and maybe in the spirit of what we're doing on the others, we should have the identification of lone finalists, spread it out, and then let Holly check everybody's calendars to make sure we can try to get the most together. So maybe have the identification of the lone finalist between April 3rd through April 6th. And then we decide on a date based on responses she gets from people's calendars to make sure we don't have, I'd hate to go through all this and then all of a sudden we couldn't get a quorum up on April 6th for some reason.
Got it?
And I'm out that whole week.
Well, really?
So that's why you want to move it up to the
Yeah,
the
I'd like to do it on the 30th.
30th.
Well, let's just make that range longer and let's see what we can accomplish.
Why don't we make it,
Give ourselves, just say the 30th through the
To the 6th?
Yeah.
6th,
How about that?
and that way we have that window.
Okay, so then your callbacks would.
And this is just for,
Callbacks would
27th
be-
through the 30th.
Yeah.
and then identification will be the 30th through the 6th.
With a hire on the 27th.
Yeah.
it would be nice if, I know everybody's calendar is different, but it would be really nice if the lone finalist date and the hire date, we had a full board.
interviews will be March 20th through 24th. Callback interviews will be March 27th through the 30th. Identification of lone finalists will be March 30th through April 6th, and hire of a superintendent April 27th.
Yes.
Okay. So that's the calendar that you'll be acting on.
That's the goal, but it could
Yes,
change
it
as we
could
move
change,
forward, correct?
absolutely. It's,
Because life happens. Moving target.
but this will be posted as well on the website with the announcement so that the applicants have an idea of the process.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve the plan and calendar for the selection of the superintendent of schools as discussed.
I'll second.
Okay, with that said, I'll go back to your letter. Then the date due would be March the 3rd,
Yep, I got it.
okay? Have a motion and a seconded. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye, and raise your hand. All those opposed. Do I hear any other motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. Thank you.
We're gonna be